here at the opening of this very important meeting. Let me recognize first of all the Honorable Reuben Meade, Premier of Montserrat, who is attending this first meeting, not his first CARICOM meeting by any chance, but his first meeting since assuming office in Montserrat, and so welcome to him. Honorable Paula Gubi-Spoon, Minister of Trade and Industry of Trinidad and Tobago and Chair of this Council. Other ministers around the table, I have to admit that it is pleasing to see so many of you around the table in person at this meeting. Heads and other representatives of regional institutions, colleagues of CARICOM Secretariat, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this 59th regular meeting of the COTED. The agenda before us is extensive, covering important regional trade, economic integration, and development issues. As this COTED deliberates, we are reminded that the framers of the revised treaty sought to be careful to strike the right balance between the common interests of the community and the interests of member states within our community of sovereign states. They did not intend to promote winners and losers. Rather, the objective is a community that supports enhanced trade, investment, integration of production and development for all. I am pleased to note that this COTED has several items on which progress has been made. There are others for which finalization of work is possible, including the reports on the review of the Common External Tariff and the Rules of Origin, the report on the draft Rules of Procedure for the COTED, and preparation for further negotiations with Colombia. Free movement of skills, the reports of progress on free movement of skills, the reports of progress in implementing all the approved categories and consideration of the addition of aviation personnel is encouraging. These efforts will strengthen the free movement of skills regime as action to implement the conference's decision on full free movement continues to percolate. I am pleased to note that there has been progress in the work on Article 164 measures. Article 164 recognizes that participation in the single market and economy must accommodate the diverse interests and circumstances of all member states. Similarly, the partial scope agreements before this COTED remind us that the treaty is designed to support individual member states in building bilateral trade arrangements that respond to their particular circumstances. I therefore encourage ministers to apply the guidelines provided by Article 80 of the treaty in expediting the consideration of these proposed agreements. Madam Chair, I urge the 59th COTED to adopt realistic and practical decisions on which all in the community can rely. The treaty provides specific pathways to address national challenges, including through deferrals and derogations that are agreed among member states. Taking this approach ensures predictability for stakeholders and for the people of the community. It removes the uncertainty that arises when agreed commitments and obligations are disregarded or referred to consultations and indeterminate processes. Senior officials have done a commendable job of addressing the technical issues. Their report provides a solid basis for ministers to address significant policy questions and deliver actionable decisions, having due regard to the treaty requirement to address the budgetary implications of all decisions at the time of adoption. This is essential to counter any tendency for decision implementation to be deferred and delayed for lack of resources. Finally, Madam Chair, I urge this COTED to make full use of the treaty's rules and flexibilities as it addresses the matters on the table, especially the most sensitive. I am confident that under your leadership and with the valuable contribution of the ministers present and heads of delegations, we will deliver a successful outcome from this 59th meeting of the council. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and it is my pleasure to hand over to Minister Gopiskun.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. And I wish to recognize again Dr. Carla Bennett, the Secretary General of CARICOM, all of my colleague ministers who are present here today, but also the Honorable Premier of Montserrat, Honorable Ruben Mead, also Ambassador Wayne Mukuk, the Assistant Secretary General of the CARICOM Single Market and Trade, Dr. Wendell Samuel, Assistant Secretary General, Economic Integration, Innovation and Development, Ms. Lisa Shoham, the General Counsel, all of the members of organizations that are here this morning, all of members of staff and executive members of staff of the CARICOM. And here we go. We have a packed agenda today. I want to emphasize this morning the important role that is assigned to us in COTED as a council that addresses the single market and trade and economic development issues that are at the forefront of our community's agenda. Our meeting will consider actionable recommendations of our senior officials who met earlier this month on the 6th and 7th of November. And I'm confident that the report of the preparatory meeting of officials and other documentation that they have been reviewed and the delegations are briefed and therefore ready to work. We have a range of matters for discussion and for decision, hopefully. With respect to the implementation of the CSME, we will consider several important initiatives which need to be advanced, including the free movement of CARICOM nationals, the approval of the revised draft policy for the regulation of mergers and acquisitions in the CSME, the functioning of the CARICOM Competition Commission in a dual role, and the community's intellectual property framework. We will have to do work on other trade and goods issues that are the mainstay of COTED's work, including the grant of suspensions of the CET, and so we will consider the recommendations from the sectoral working groups on the review of the CET and the rules of origin. Also matters arising from the 45th meeting of the Customs Committee held recently. The outcome of the technical working group examining the use of specifications and applications for suspensions of the CET and the granting of safeguard certificates. The status of member states' implementation of the CET based on HS 2022, as well as the CARICOM Model Customs Bill and regulations. Also the implementation of the monitoring mechanisms for sugar, red kidney beans, and the action required by member states to reactivate the monitoring mechanisms for cement and rice. Also, a member state's proposal to include an item on the list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemptions. So we hope to see some positive movements reflected in reports that we will receive on specific issues of compliance with provisions of the revised treaty and decisions of the COTED. On external trade relations, we will consider multilateral developments since the 13th WTO Ministerial Conference, also actions taken at the 58th meeting of the COTED to resume the CARICOM Colombia negotiations, developments pertaining to CARICOM-US trade relations, and there are 2 member states that have made requests for certification and approval of partial scope agreements in keeping with Article 80 of the RTC. I believe those are Trinidad, Tobago, and Belize. And on standards, we will consider CrossQ's request for approval of the final draft CARICOM regional standard for labeling of goods, prepackaged food specifications, and the CrossQ's operating budget for the April 2025 to March 2026 period. We will also consider the 2025 work program and budget of the CCC, the CARICOM Competition Commission, as well as receive a report on key accomplishment under their 2024 work program. We will also consider and hope to adopt COTED draft rules of procedure emanating from the open-ended working group which was charged to address the matter. Additionally, there are a number of matters for information and update, including the implementation of the protocol on public procurement in the community, progress with respect to the program of support measures for the implementation of the Article 164 of the revised treaty, the Secretary General's grant of CT suspensions and safeguards, the implementation of SimSupro, that is a CARICOM interactive marketplace and suspension procedure, the assessment of the community's readiness to negotiate trade liberalization commitments, the study to determine the feasibility of the CCC functioning as a regulator of utilities, CARICOM's implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, and the Caribbean EU Development Cooperation. So with regard to process, I expect to keep our deliberations focused and tight, agenda item by agenda item, recognizing that this is a very loaded meeting, which we're happy for. And so that I will encourage very brief and focused interventions directed to the issues under consideration. And above all, colleagues, let's really be ready to make some bold and decisive action on matters that require clear direction as ministers. So we need to take some decisions at this COTED meeting.